Jay, how are you? Looking forward to this conversation we're about to embark upon.
Ryan, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
So I got to connect some of the dots for the listeners. So I was looking on LinkedIn. I saw I want to give a shout out to Arturo, who's down in Vistage in Texas, and he had commented on your post of your book launch. And then of course I pull the string, and all of a sudden I'm like selling blinds.com to Home Depot. You're a conscious capitalism fan, and you wrote this new book. And I'm like, oh my gosh, got to get Jay on the conversation or on the show. So there's a lot of different ways we're going to go with this, Jay, and I'm very excited for the dynamic conversation that I have the opportunity to embark upon. For the listeners that might not be familiar with the kind of the Cliff Note Blinds.com story, why don't you kind of explain how you got to where you are, the book that you just got done writing, and then we'll go back and we'll just go a bunch of different directions with the conversation.
Okay. Back in 1987, I owned a little 1,000 square foot shop that sold blinds and shades called Laura's Draperies. It was actually started by my wife, whose name was Naomi. Yeah. Naomi started the business. I had just been fired as VP of Finance from Meineke Discount Mufflers, and that's a whole story in itself. So I needed something to do. I was a CPA, so naturally, the best thing for me to do would be to sell blinds. So we opened up a second store, and I'm going to people's homes, helping them decide what window covering they should buy. It was a good business. We were ultimately doing about $1.5 million and making a decent amount of money there. And then I heard in 1993 about something called the World Wide Web. Thought, whoa, what is that? I didn't know what email was. 1993 was the year before Amazon even started. Forget Google, YouTube, Uber. None of that was there. Broadband wasn't even there. People didn't even know, I didn't know that you could buy things online. But it was just a little experiment. I wanted to make buying blinds and shades a no-brainer. So we called it No Brainer Blinds, the world's most popular and trusted online source for blinds, because we were the only ones selling blinds at the time. So it was just me. People would call into the store, into the Laura's Drapery store, and they'd say, all of our customer representatives are busy. And then they'd call me in between my appointments at Laura's Draperies, and I would answer these calls, actually would call them back from my car in between appointments. And
with one of those huge cell phones that's like nailed into your car.
It's exactly one of those big brick phones. When I talk live, I show a picture of that phone. It's a giant phone.
I love it.
It's crazy.
Like $3,000 a month or something like that.
And I had a calculator on my front seat. I had order pads, and I would just write it in and talk to people from my phone. I was the whole company. I did that for a few years. At some point, I said, this is crazy. I probably should hire somebody. And I hired a couple of people to answer the calls. And then I was just going out and doing my Laura's Draperies thing while part-time I had people answering the calls. And by 2001, I was doing as much online with those two people, with me doing virtually nothing, as I was in my store. And I was working 7 days a week in my store. I mean, what is wrong with this picture? What's wrong is I need to get out of the retail business and never have a store again. Of course, once I sold to Home Depot, we had 2,000 stores, but that's way in the future.
It comes full circle.
Yeah, but it was worth it. So that's how it started. It was really just a marketing experiment for Laura's. The first website was for lauras.com, and it only was a brochure, no e-commerce. Then once Amazon started, I thought, well, you can sell books. Maybe you can sell blinds. I mean, I've got a great idea. People aren't going to be able to see it. They're not going to be able to touch it. They can't see the color. I'm going to make them measure it themselves, and they're going to have to install it themselves. Well, everybody says that was a harebrained idea, but I did it anyway because what did I have to lose? I had nothing to lose.
Right.
$3,000, and that's how it started. I had no vision as to what that could be. I had no vision of what the internet could be. It was just an experiment. It was one little small step to see if I could incrementally improve my business incrementally improve myself. And eventually, we really were the number one online retailer of blinds in the world and doing hundreds of millions of dollars and a lot more now.
Jay, it's such a good story, and I know you summed up. I'm assuming so many things, and 2 decades worth of experience in a couple minutes. And to kind of set us off, I want to set some context because I listened to your podcast interview with John Warlow, which was I thought fantastic. You guys were getting a lot of the mechanics of you taking on some money from private equity, prior to selling to Home Depot, and just some of these challenges that I do want to get some insights on. But what I think is super interesting and about your story is the length that you did it, a very very large big box shop that bought you, and yet I saw your conscious capitalism presentation. And what the context I want to set here is that I find it extremely difficult from 5 years of doing interviews like this for an entrepreneur who starts out like, selling a CPA selling blinds, right? That about sums up, it's like the whole E-myth, right? The plumber that just wants to be a plumber by himself. And
That should be on my grave stone. Who was it? It was a CPA who sold blinds. I never thought about that,
I
but
love
that's
it.
actually catchy. I like it.
Well, and I know I got a bunch of recovering CPAs and current CPAs on staff as well, so I understand the the irony there too. Is but what's so interesting, Jay, is that I see this evolution that people go through when they have their company of like then all of a sudden that this business becomes something, it's part of their identity. They realize that they're starting to make an impact with the business. And you went through a tragic event with your wife that you had mentioned in your presentation that really got you thinking. And I'm really curious, to kind of set the overall wrapper to the conversation about this journey that you had eventually selling to Home Depot and then your book is kind of the shifting of your mindset and the evolution of like, hey, this is a business that could be worth something. And then as you got that purpose, keeping alignment with the purpose and the impact that you want to have with your business to still running and growing and selling a business that becomes sometimes emotionless for a lot of the parties involved. And so, maybe kind of give some, start with like what happened through your experience with your wife that allowed you to find this purpose and how you integrated that into the company.
Well, I said in 2001, I actually sold the store, Laura's Draperies, and went full-time online because, well, we were doing just as much online. And it was a lot easier and it was a lot more fun, way more fun. Well, in 2002, August 12th, 2002, to be exact, after being married to Naomi for more than 25 years, 3 children, love of my life, met her in college. She died from breast cancer. So there I was, depressed, wondering, will I ever be happy again? How do I maintain my optimism? And decided I needed to do something. I couldn't just stay sad. I had all
Mm-hmm.
these employees now. I had these 3 children. I'm a single parent. I started becoming very introspective about what makes me tick. How do I define happiness? How do I define success? Those type of existential things. And I
Mm-hmm.
studied myself and I studied books on philosophy, on happiness, neuroscience, core values, purpose, vision, all the kinds of things that to me at the time, being a CPA, seemed kind of soft and squishy and the idealistic things that the HR department would create and put on a plaque, hang it on a wall, and never think about it again. But I needed to do this. Books like um, Built to Last by Jim Collins that talked about core values, Hewlett Packard, and these other companies. So I said, well, maybe that's what I need to do. And I did. And I started thinking about what really was important to me. And I came up with 2 or 3 things, 2 of which turns out not to have been the right things. But at the time, I thought they were. And really, even my core values, and one of them is to evolve continuously. My core values evolved even. But without going through all those now, the point is, it took death for me to wake up and say, I need to know who I am. And you say there was more objective, less fun. Well, it was always fun for me. Being in business is fun. Making a difference is fun. Hiring people is fun because you're evolving. And my core values are simply now, and I'm going to distill it down to 4 things that are definitely the reason how a couple of hundred people, really less than that, could beat Home Depot, could beat and still beat Amazon. Like, how did this small little group of people do this? It was because we understood our core values of, we call them the 4 E's. First E is to evolve continuously. And that means you have to evolve, and you have to evolve everything around you. Processes, advertising, just whatever there is in business, you always have to get better. But your responsibility is not just to the business. In fact, it's more to yourself. We require people to get better. It's not we suggest you get better and evolve. That's what we do. It's a core value. We wake up with the purpose of evolving and evolving everything around us to get people to become better than what they ever believed possible. The purpose of blinds.com was to help people become better than what they ever believed possible. That's our purpose. It's not to change the world. It's not to beautify the world with great blinds. It's not to be the #1 online retailer of blinds in the world, although we were. That was a result of our core values. So evolve continuously. Second, in order to evolve, you have to take chances. You've got to try things. Experiment without fear of failure. You say, of course, everybody knows that businesses need to take chances, but it's hard. People don't want to fail. They're afraid of looking stupid. There's all sorts of reasons, psychological and otherwise. Practical. You experiment, you fail, you get fired. That's a practical reason. So people are not used to trying to do things a little bit differently. But if you want to get better, you got to do that. The third thing is express yourself. For me to make a decision, I need data. For everybody to make a decision, you need data. You want a lot of data. You want disparate points of view, which means you want everybody to feel free and safe to speak up. And when everybody speaks up for the purpose of helping everybody else get better, to become better than what they ever believed possible, you've got an organization that gets better automatically. It's autonomous excellence. You do very little as a CEO when you have an organization that is automatically getting better. And then the 4th E is sort of the combination of all those others. Enjoy the ride. And enjoy the ride can be celebrating, eating food, cake, foosball, fire pits, whatever you're going to do. Giant lava lamps, which we had. They were huge. It was like you'd see these giant lava lamps in Las Vegas or something. That's how big they were. In fact, the guy actually did lava lamps in Las Vegas, which is how I found them. No, that's awesome. So it's fun. So, but it's not about that. Enjoying the ride is about evolving. It's about experimenting. It's about expressing yourself. It's having the security and the safety to not have to talk the way you think other people want you to talk, to be yourself, to not wear the corporate mask, however you want to say it. And when you've got people who are themselves and are free to talk, and they can just be much more creative, and they solve problems much more easily because they try things that they in another organization they might not have tried. They develop software that is so good that it can get integrated into 2,000 stores and a platform like Home Depot that has 450,000 employees and does, I don't know, I think $130 billion. So the software that this tiny little group of people created with not much money was able to be good enough to help customers throughout the world. That's fun because when you want to build something of significance and of consequence, the first thing you do is you help people make their lives become consequential. And that's what we did. We
I
helped
love
people
it.
become consequential. So in turn, we could achieve things that people thought were not possible by using less money than people thought we needed. Well, of course, Home Depot wants to buy us. We're kicking their butt. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And um, so first of all, anybody that hears the passion that you have in these four core values, and I can only assume your employees, like everybody would probably want to work with you or partner with you or buy things from you. I mean, I can just people become the first domino. What I'm super intrigued with as we go down this conversation, Jay, is like I think a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners that are not from private equity or the world of raising money and all the finance stuff that we can talk about, but a lot of them don't know those type of things that private equity firms know, right? And we can get to that, like how you raise the money and how you end up eventually sold. But I think it's so difficult for people to stay true to something like you just talked about, because like every entrepreneur has their own version of this business that is a part of them and how they're expressing themselves through their customers and their tools and their competition or whatever it is. It's so difficult, I've seen, for people to know that this company is a financial asset, because it is, and it can create the wealth that allows them to have the impact and the enjoyment that they want. But they don't know the mechanics of the valuation, the value growth, and exit options to the mechanical like rules of the game that allow them to keep the true north of all the things that are important to them. So I'm curious, like as you went through this journey after you had the introspective reflecting, you came up with this. How did you balance the mechanics of financing, growing, and raising the money and the shareholder issues, like with like, hey, I want to make the impact with these four core values that I think are so important? Because I think so many times people can get taken advantage of if they don't know the game, the mechanical rules of the game. They're that what we call the first principle. The squishy stuff, like you said, becomes the thing that actually gets sacrificed, unfortunately, for so many people.
But for me, that is what we did. If it is a true, authentic core value, and people say authentic, transparent, they use these words, but I don't think they really know what it means. When
Yeah.
you have a core value, this is what it means to me. It means when you wake up in the morning, this is what guides your behavior. This is what you do. You improve, you speak up, you experiment, and you look to have fun. What better way to do it than a business? My wife, Barbara, said he goes to his playground every day.
I love it.
He goes
I
to his
love it.
playground every day. And there was not one day that I didn't have fun. There was not one. Now, that doesn't mean there weren't really hard days or, quote, failures. But if your core values are to evolve, then what better than failure to teach you how to get better? And when I started, I knew nothing. If you had had this interview with me before, I'd be sitting here just not be able to say anything because I didn't know anything. I knew nothing.
I can relate.
So I had no bad habits. So I was able to, with a learning mentality, to seek out the people who knew way more than I did, to hire people who were way smarter and more of a domain expert in marketing, in IT, in call center management. These weren't things I knew. So you hire, you learn, you read. I have something called just-in-time learning. So when I needed to think about branding, I read like 3 or 4 books and articles on branding until I felt like I had enough to at least hire somebody who really knew it, but it put me in a better position to be able to hire and know what I wanted them to do. Look, just if you're driving a car, you don't have to be a mechanic to drive it, but you know what the car does. It drives, it turns, it backs up, it steers. So that's really all you need to know, is that a car will propel you somewhere, but you get the mechanics, you get the drivers, the other people to do that work. You don't have to do it.
Well, and I love that, and I think there's a lot to be learned from trying to internalize that because intellectually knowing is one thing, and then actually, like you said, behaving that way is a different thing. One thing that like you would mention in the one of your stories about when you had misalignment with your shareholders, the original shareholders, some other shareholders that had come along for part of the ride. I don't know when and where they got involved, but I thought it was really interesting when I was hearing your story. One of the challenges I see so many business owners deal with is that they have multiple shareholders that have different core values or different things that they want with the money. Like, I want the money today, which we call solving for annual income, suck all the cash out of it versus, hey, I want to reinvest for growth. Like, that is where, a lot of the challenges, whether they're obvious to the people that are arguing about it or arguing or debating about it, whatever you want to call it, versus like, hey, this is like we're just disagreeing with what we want to do with the money, or invest this person or take the money back. How did you take the core values that you had and the vision that you had for the company and use those tools to have these discussions with people about the business and what you were trying to do with it and how that misalignment worked?
Well, this is going to sound a little curt, and I don't mean it to be, but if they weren't aligned with the core values, we got rid of them. It, you're,
Well,
I'll give you some
I honestly
specifics.
love it. What a great answer.
I mean, that if you have core values and this is what makes you tick, then you have to get rid of the things that are not making you tick, that are getting in the way. I know. And by the way, I don't
Isn't it
think
the point of a
anything that
course?
I ever say is particularly visionary or really smart. It just seems so logical. If things are getting in your way, get rid of them. If things aren't working, stop doing them. If things are working,
Mhm.
do more of it, a lot more of it. So when we hire, we look for people who already have proven to us that they are wanting to improve their lives. We're not looking for somebody to come in and say, hey, we have a learning environment and we expect you to get better. We want to know that that person already has the propensity within them to improve. So we'll ask questions in the interview. Tell me about some things you're doing right now to get better at anything. And if they
Mhm.
are
Interesting.
taking cooking lessons or learning how to build a radio, things like that, that's great. So this person has already proven that they are a person who has the core value of wanting to improve.
Mhm.
Because if you don't have that core value when you're in an organization that expects evolution, you're going to be ostracized because you're not rising up to the level of the challenge, and people will see it, and it will be very painful for you, and eventually you're going to leave. We had investors who did exactly what you said. They just wanted cash. And I was the biggest stockholder, so I would get the most cash as it would be distributed. But I wanted to take the money, put it back into the business, and grow it. They'd go, what do you need an
Mhm.
IT department for? You're selling blinds. I said, no, we are a marketing company. We're a technology company that just happens to be selling blinds. And we're eventually going to be selling more than blinds, which we actually ended up doing. So once that happened, and we had taken up to that point 16 years into our business, we had taken no institutional capital, zero.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Then we took just a small minority raise uh, from a private equity firm and bought out the two stockholders who wanted the cash. That's why we took the money. Now, they had a lot more
Mhm.
value as well, but they were aligned to get rid of people who were not aligned and help us build the business. And it was a beautiful relationship. It was great. You hear all these horror stories about private equity. This was not a horror. This was a dream. This was not a nightmare. It was awesome.
I love it.
And it was less
And
than
and I
two
love it.
years
And I want
after
to
that we sold the business, unbeknownst to them and us, because we didn't think we were ready to sell it yet. We weren't looking to sell the business. We were just making so many inroads and selling so much, and really, I guess, upsetting the competition because we were doing so much more than really everybody else combined. It's like, who are these guys? What are they? What? How
Just
are they doing that?
poke the big bear. I
Well,
love
our
it. I
advertising
love
at the
it.
time was prices lower than Home Depot and lower than Lowe's. And do you want a schmuck from plumbing to sell you blinds? I mean, they did not like that. We really, there was a talk show host that used to say that. We never said it, but he did. When I went back after we sold the business to Home Depot, Bernie Marcus, one of the founders, came up to me and goes, "What are you doing? You can't say that stuff about us anymore." And of course, I stopped. I was very courteous.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
going to tell
we're
Bernie
taking
Marcus
on this.
no, but it was all about, and it was fun. I mean, you can tell even that conversation, which was a serious conversation. I'm kind of smiling. It was it's like just a incredible outcome to building something of consequence and by helping people become consequential.
So I want to talk about that and the exit to Home Depot, and then I want to go back because I think there's some really good insights that we can get the listeners to understand on like the business model and then how you actually went about that private equity structure. But like the first question I have, Jay, is that I see so many, especially right now with the amount of M&A activity and the money sloshing around, and private equity is, I mean, it's just running rampant. And again, private equity or big strategic buyers, there's a spectrum, right? You got the really good ones that are amazing, and then there's all the rest, right? And I think when you say building something of consequence and changing people's lives and having fun, all the stuff that you're talking about, I find it very difficult for people that have been on the show sharing their stories to align what they built and their core values and their conscious capitalism mission with someone that is like optimizing for shareholder value at all costs, that are doing stock buybacks, that don't give a shit about anybody else. Excuse my language, but it's like literally like, and again that, but you build this thing, and I think there's this misnomer that someone says, hey, the only way you get your 100 million is selling to the devil, or you don't do anything. And it's like, I think that people don't realize that there's a lot of flavors in between that. So they just don't know, like, hey, like, because how much passion you have about the core values in the book, aligning that with something where you don't take the money and then it all gets put away. And how did you think through that landscape when you were going about this?
Well, you do not need to gut your soul to build a business. You do not need to be harsh. You don't need to be a jerk. You can be kind. You can bring humanity into business. I think my book, Lead from the Core, The Four Principles for Profit and Prosperity, is about bringing humanity back into business. It's got all these stories that we've talked about, and a lot of stories, and it talks about the 4 E's a lot and gives plenty of examples, and it's tactical and prescriptive and strategic for entrepreneurs who are building a business and wanting to build it. But what the real heart of it is, if you really get down to it, is you can be nice. In fact, the more generous you are, the more you get back. You hear that, but it is so true. You should give people the most you can that's in the long-term interest of the company. You shouldn't see what little you can give and see if you can get away with it, which is what people think you need to do. You don't need to do that. And look, our results were amazing. If our results weren't good, then all the stuff I'm talking about, it'd be false precision. It would just be BS.
Yeah.
But we were growing 25% compounded every year. We were improving our gross margin by 400 basis points within a couple of years. Our bottom line was strong. Our retention was good. Our turnover was only 8%. 8% turnover. So the numbers spoke for themselves. So if you're a private equity company coming in, or a strategic buyer like Home Depot who comes in, they say, we don't want to screw this up. This core value stuff that Jay's talking about and that we see actually is happening is working. I don't necessarily believe in it, and I don't know that I could do it, but it's working for him. And as long as his numbers are good, let him be how he is. And that's pretty much what happened. I think people were not necessarily aligned really authentically with it, but they knew it was working. And for us,
Mhm.
customer intimacy and caring about people first created the profit and the growth and the giant market share that we had and the low
Mhm.
turnover rate we had. I think now, even when you think about why are people leaving, what is this great resignation? What is Striketober? All these things. I think it's actually you can blame the pandemic, and yeah, technology has made it easier to do it. And there's a lot of employers that say, well, I guess I better believe in a distributed workforce or I'm not going to be able to keep people. And that is actually true. But why are people wanting to leave in the first place? Because you're not providing them with what they need. And as long as you're paying them fairly, what they need is to feel safe. What they need is to feel consequential, to have significance, to have a voice, and to feel that generosity and the support that you really want them to become the best they can be, whether it's at your company or whether ultimately they want to go somewhere else and run their own company. And why not
Mhm.
have a heart to heart, candid conversation with your employees and know that?
Mhm.
Why don't people say, what do you really want out of your life? Do you want to become the VP here? Do you want to be a senior manager? Oh, no, you want to be a CEO somewhere. All right, well, let's help you become a CEO. Here are the things that you need to do that, and I'm going to help you do that. Why would somebody
What do you
leave
think the
you
reason
to
is,
do
Jay?
that? Why would somebody leave? They wouldn't, because they're being paid and they're becoming better, and you're helping them achieve their goal. And in the meantime, you've got an engaged employee who is on board and doing everything they can to reciprocate. And it's not about
Mhm.
manipulation. It's about caring, and it's about alignment, and it's about teamwork, and it's about all having that same passion for all becoming the best we can be. Again, whether it's with you or outside, but better that they do
Mhm.
it with you for the time they're going to be there than to leave because you're not providing them with the development that they need.
I don't think that there's a way I could agree with you more in any of your comments. I've seen it. I've been in companies where it's not acted upon and it's just obvious, right? Like, I mean, again, it's easier from the outside. You go like, look, it's just it's very clear why people are leaving, why they've hit, stalled their growth. I mean, it's all people. Whether you're doing e-commerce, you're doing services or manufacturing, it's all based in people. And I think go back to expand on my question is like all of the clarity you had on what was important and how important the people are and the stakeholders like you just described. How did you make sure that the private equity firm and Home Depot were aligned with you? And then how did you protect yourself in the agreements structurally? Because like, and here's the more context behind the question, Jay, is so many times people have been on this show, and I've seen it in my life, like where you either get really lucky because the private equity firm actually had a soul and they did what they said that they were going to do, or they said all the right things, documents get signed, they trip covenants, they take the shares, that like something like that happens, even though they told you what they wanted you to or what you wanted to hear to get the deal done. So I think there's a little bit of like trust, and then make sure to verify or protect yourself. So how did you have those conversations with both the private equity firm and Home Depot and to keep your alignment with while it's protecting yourself?
Okay, so there's really two parts to your question. The first one is about the private equity firm, and the second one was Home Depot. And they're both
Mm-hmm.
different answers. And I think they're both pretty interesting, especially the Home Depot part. So let me start with the less interesting one, and that's the more of the business side,
Like, build
and
up.
then build it
I like
up.
it.
Exactly, build it up to Home Depot. It's not just luck. I mean, is it luck when you hire an employee and they work out or they don't work out? I mean, there is some luck, but you need to do diligence. You need to ask certain questions. You need to talk to people that have been part of their portfolios. Ask them the question, tell me about some times when things were not going well, when they were going sideways. How did they react? What happened then? Find out what happens when things aren't exactly kosher. And you can ask
Mm-hmm.
lots of questions like that to find out if there's alignment. And when you talk to people, you don't just talk to that head person, the lead investor. You talk to people within their organization. You potentially go to their office. You talk to other people. You talk to the analysts who are doing the diligence. You really study the people and get comfort. It's not luck. Again, there is some luck, and sometimes, look, I've made hiring mistakes too, and I could have made a mistake, and I was paranoid about making the wrong choice. But I think you can do some diligence and feel and put the odds more in your favor. And you can tell about when you talk about your vision, whether it resonates with them, and you can ask questions. So, how would you see your part in this long-term plan? What do you think about it? What would you do to help us along? You ask behavioral questions like that, and you can find out if they go, well, I don't know. I mean, we're really just interested in you going public, and we've never been asked that question before. Well, that they're out. That's not somebody who you would want to do business with. Now, I say this like you've got plenty of choices. Most companies don't have plenty of choices, and when there's somebody and you've got, let's say you've got one or two possible term sheets, it's a little sketchy. We had 7 term sheets, but I will say this first 7 that we approached all turned us down. We got turned down by the first 7 people, and that's another story which we can get back to as to what I changed. The one thing I changed that switched the whole discussion around. Okay, so it doesn't have to be luck. It can actually, it's like hiring again. With Home Depot, that's another matter. Home Depot is buying you, and yes, it's your baby, and you started it with just an idea, and you were this tiny little startup. Really, you're taking orders from your car, literally. And then you build it up, doing hundreds of millions and hundreds of employees and integrating with 2,000 stores and all that. But when you sell to a company like that, first, does it really matter? I mean, they give you money, and if they give you enough money, it's a good thing. I mean, you built this up, you sold it.
You sold it to them, and it's now theirs.
As much as I care about core values and purpose, and I do, obviously, at some point, you sell your company, you take the money, and you leave. That's the simple answer. Now, with Home Depot, I stayed on 7 years after I sold. Have you ever talked to?
Wow, I didn't know it was that long.
Have you talked to any entrepreneur that sold their company to a big company and stayed more than 90 days or a year?
I don't think, and I've got hundreds of interviews, and I don't think I've heard of one person.
I know.
I'm trying to think back. I think you got the award for that one.
I know I don't like using the word unicorn because it implies something else in business, but it's unusual. My attorney said she's never seen it before. So why? Why did I stay? Because we had this understanding that we are different. Yes, Home Depot does care about its associates. No question. Respect for all individuals, do the right thing. That is true with Home Depot. But their first tendency is towards operational excellence. And they are very excellent at operational excellence. We are excellent at customer intimacy. We care and look first at our customers and our people, intimate with people. And I don't know, have you heard of the book, The Love Languages, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So just for anyone who's listening that doesn't know about that, there is a theory that he has that everybody has their own love language. It could be touch. It could be having quality time, doing work for the other person. There's 5 of them. And as long as you,
I'm the affirmation junkie. Yeah. If you give me affirmation, I'll just melt.
That's another one. And by the way, Ryan, you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Hey, let's have you back on the show. What do you want me to do, Jay?
So the idea is that you, with your significant other, understand that your love language is different, and don't try to make the other person into your love language. It could be completely different, and don't get frustrated by it. Same thing in business. I think there's three love languages, as I learned from reading the book, The Discipline of Market Leaders. It's operational efficiency, customer intimacy, and innovation, technical innovation, or just innovation, really. And those are three love languages. And of course, we were never going to change Home Depot. Giant, monolithic company, doing very, very well. And here we are. We just had to prevent them from changing us. And the CEO and really everybody said, look, we have this history, like all big companies when they take in small, to just suck them in and grind them down. Don't let that happen. Speak up. Well, great, because that happens to be one of my core values, to express myself. And now I've got all this money, so I don't really need the job. I don't need the money. So it did make it a lot easier.
No matter what.
Yeah. So it did make it a lot easier. But I also had this vision of taking what we had built, this platform of selling complex, customizable products, configurable products, as they call them at Home Depot, and eventually selling more than blinds. And we had never actually been able to do that. With Home Depot, voila. We have merchants, we've got supply chain, we have customers, we've got everything. Now we can take that platform, and if we convince them to let us do it, which we did, we can then become even better. And our vision of being the best in the world at selling configurable products will happen. And that's why I stayed, because they gave us autonomy to continue doing that. They allowed us to feel significant and consequential in our own little bitty corner of the giant house of Home Depot. And we were continuing to build it, and they gave us money. And we're doing all these things. Who would walk away from that? Because it gets back again to my core values. There's no misalignment. We were evolving. Mm-hmm. We were experimenting. I was speaking up to Home Depot, and it was gobs of fun. So fun.
Oh, I love it. Well, and was there anything that because I think that's every entrepreneur that I've talked to that doesn't want to do an ESOP or some sort, and keep it in their family, or some sort of longer play for them on their own. If they want to sell to a strategic buyer, the strategic buyer Bo Burlingham wrote this wonderful book called Finish Big. He's been on my show a couple of times, and it's all about the entrepreneur knowing who they are, what they want from their business, and why, being super clear, and then aligning that clarity with the buyer, and the buyer appreciating and being respectful of what they've built, and then the owner being proud of the process. I mean, that it's like almost a self-evident truth that that's what people want, but so many times it doesn't happen. And I'm wondering, obviously you asking all the questions and making sure that there is alignment. Is there anything that you did to make sure that, after the fact, when you're on, quarter 4 of the deal and you're sitting in a meeting and they go, hey, you know what I think we're going to do? Some new person's in there and they want to have a different strategy of whether it's bastardizing your offering or something.
It happened all the time. It happened all the time. It happened every quarter, not just the fourth quarter. When we first, after we were sold with Home Depot, I call it merged. It was a merger. And I know we were this little bitty 115 million and they were doing at the time 80 billion, but the document says merger agreement. So I call it a merger. And every time I say that with them, they smile at me like, oh, that's very cute, Jay. It's very cute. You merged with us.
I support it. I love it.
But they say it. And that was a really important thing for internally for us to know that we were merging with them. We weren't being gobbled up. It was a mindset that we had that we could actually influence. We were like a tiny drop of magic potion in a giant vat of Home Depot. And you could put that little drop in there and it would barely tint the water, but it was there. It was there. And we knew it was there. And the fact that we knew we were having an effect on Home Depot of any kind, that we were evolving and helping others around us, Home Depot and its customers, evolve, was very satisfactory. It was gratifying to be able to do that. So there's no misalignment here. But there was a time when right afterwards also where they wanted to change our compensation plan because the way we were paying people was so different than the way they were doing it. And they go, well, we're a public company. We have to be fair. We have to be consistent. We can't let one person get paid one way and another person another way. So, Jay, we're not going to do that anymore. And I said, guys, we are. We are going to do it because here's why. Let me tell you why. But it wasn't like I was arguing. I was just influencing.
Expressing yourself, right?
I said, look what this is doing, and gave them data and facts to support. It wasn't just some crazy idea, because we were paying people not just based on quantifiable metrics, but on qualifiable metrics. We were paying people in our contact center, which, by the way, we didn't even call it a contact center. We called it a customer engagement center, the CEC, because we weren't having transactions with our customers. We were engaging with them to understand their needs and providing solutions and all that. So what we were doing is paying them to not only make lots of transactions and large transactions, but they also needed to supply the right solution. So if you sold somebody the wrong product, you were penalized. In fact, you might not have gotten paid anything for that sale because you didn't provide the right solution and you didn't make it easy for the customer to understand what they needed. You weren't asking the right questions to uncover what their real needs were. There was a lot of quality built in, and it's subjective in some times. But that's a perfect example of how we just spoke up. We also did this. Pixar, when it merged with Disney, Ed Catmull, who was the CEO, and he wrote one of my favorite books called Creativity Inc., talks about what they did to have sort of, this is going to sound a little harsh, and I don't mean it to be, rules of engagement, memo of understanding. Now, he actually did that. We drafted, and it got approved, a letter that said, okay, blinds.com, you can keep your titles. I mean, I'm a CEO, but we actually dissolved our corporation, which meant, am I really a CEO? They let me stay as a CEO. And we had vice presidents and we had senior vice presidents. We kept our titles. We kept the name blinds.com because we wanted to maintain our identity. And there were a lot of things like that. Our compensation program, we said, had to stay. We said we're going to stay in Houston, which is where we're based. So all these things that I felt were important to us, to our identity, and that were the kind of the secret sauce that people wouldn't necessarily know about, we wanted to make sure that stayed. And it didn't mean it wasn't going to change, but at least we gave it a shot. And it did. And they've been super with us. I mean, why would I stay for 7 years? And now that I'm gone, they're doing even better, which is that's like a relief. In fact, I wrote the book. I wrote the book so that when I knew I was going to be leaving, there would be this primer as to, well, here's what we did to get to where we are. And if you stay true to this, we can continue to do what we've done in the past. That's why I originally wrote it. And then as I was teaching in the business school, I thought, wow, everybody needs this. And then so I just expanded the book for more than just what we did at blinds.com. And it's been awesome.
I love it. I love it. And well, you're moving on to something. But before we get to that, Jay, one thing that I'm observing from how you're discussing the even the private equity. I want to go back to that. Well, what you did after the 7 people said no, but the Home Depot transaction is you built a really, really good company that other people wanted that gave you choices. And that's honestly the number one thing I want for every business. Or you said your purpose is to have help people have make consequential
help people become better than what they ever believed possible.
And I want entrepreneurs to have as many choices that they possibly can have. And one of the best ways to do that is to have a valuable business that you can get what you want out of it. And so what did you do? Are there inflection points where you were building a really good business that allowed you to have those choices? Because, I think so many times an entrepreneur will circumvent things, not invest in the business, and they get to that point where the energy, it's like climbing Everest every morning because they don't like their business anymore. And by the time they get to that point, you say, "Hey, by the way, Jay, you gotta, invest and do these things over the next 3 to 5 years, burn cash and reinvest and do these things to get the value that you want." And then it's just like you might as well have told them that everything's over. So it's about, building value to then when that moment that you wake up, you say, "Hey, I want something a little bit different. The out of blue offer happens, something changes. I have choices." So like, are there things that you did in the business that you look back and go, that really moved the needle on the value to create a good company that allowed you to have those choices?
Yeah, there are a lot of those, obviously, but I do want to just take a little exception to something you said. I don't think you have to actually think about your business to get it to some place so that then you have the choice of doing what you want. That wasn't what I was doing. I was just incrementally improving myself and our people, and the business actually did as well. And as a result, that gave me the choice. It wasn't because I achieved anything, but it was because my definition of success is not attaining a goal or achieving a sales target, although that is successful. But my definition of success is being in the process of improving and improving everything around me. So I can be
Uh,
successful every day. In fact, I can be successful multiple times during the day. If I just do
mhm.
something a little bit different that makes it a little better, if I can have a conversation with one of my employees to help them get just a little bit better, both of those are definitions for me of success. And when you evolve continuously, you are you are being successful really every day and multiple times throughout the day. And if you're not, it's because you're not thinking hard enough. You're not trying to get better.
Amazing. And this is right in the vein of the messages that we had going back and forth on LinkedIn and talking about, intentionally designing the business around your life. Or maybe expand this on the concept that we were going back and forth because I think it's
Yeah.
right in line with everything that we've been talking about on the show.
Well, I think one of the tenets that you've got is that you should design your life around the business. Is that it? Or design your business around your life.
Yeah, using the business as a vehicle to create wealth, enjoy work, and make an impact is
Yeah.
kind of the
And what
the
I'm saying
staple.
is there's no difference. For me, the business actually selling blind. I don't care about selling blinds. I'm not passionate about selling blinds. I'm not passionate about beautifying the world, providing privacy and security. That does not provide me a lot of joy. What provides me as joy is just being in business, period, and becoming better and evolving and doing my core values, which I've said a few times already, but I just want to make it
Mhm,
clear.
mhm.
And what there's is if those are true core values, is there any difference between doing that in your life outside of your office than inside? That's who you are. These are not the core values of the business. These are your core values, and that means they apply all the time, no matter where you are, no matter what you do, no matter who you're with, every time that's what you do. So I think you can have fun and you don't have to have a destination of wanting to ultimately have all these options because you have all those options now. Right now, you have plenty of options, and it's up to you as to what you want to do with it. You have control over these things. So decide, do I do I want to stay where I am? Am I happy? Do I feel stagnant? Or do I want to do something different? And if you want to do something different, how do you do it? You experiment, you try something. And it doesn't mean you have to bet the farm. Just try something different. I mean, go to a different restaurant than you do, or go to that restaurant and just order something
As
freaking
simple as that,
different.
right?
Don't order the same thing all the time. That can be the first experiment that you do. I'm serious. You know,
Uh,
these people
oh,
that
I know
all
you
they
are, and I'm
drink
a routine
is one
guy.
kind of
Uh,
wine. No, experiment. I know you like that. Try something else. Maybe you like a white
uh,
instead of that cab. Try a Riesling. Come on.
oh, Jay. So there's so much truth to what you're saying, and like, what do you say to the people? Because it took something really tragic for you to get hit in the face, and have this introspective work that where you realize that life is finite. what do you like? What is your response to someone that can't get shook up, or they're kind of what you would say is asleep or a zombie, and that like they don't have this passion and vigor that you do? How do you how do you what's the catalyst for someone like that?
Well, you have a choice. The catalyst is to say, are you happy? If you are, then don't change. If you're fine, that doesn't mean you have to do what I'm saying. In fact, I want your listeners, viewers to listen to everything that I've said, really think about it, and then just throw it all away. And do whatever you makes sense for you, because what works for me is not necessarily going to work for everybody else. But you have a choice to decide what you want. Understand what really matters. What is your purpose? Why are you in business? Are you in business because you want to control your life? You want to control your destiny? Are you in business because you want to make a lot of money? Are you in business because you do want to save the world and you want to create a cure for whatever? These are real, or you just want to make a lot of money and you want to control everybody else's life. Whatever it is for you, they're all valid.
Hmm.
To me, I think it's being compassionate and generous is actually more fun and less stressful, but decide. So you don't have to, you don't need a death. I mean, in the first chapter, I start off by saying, death destroys the man, but the idea of death saves him. So no, you are going to die. People are going to die. And think about that. When you're dead, what have you done? Are you going to have regrets? What regrets do you want to prevent? Have you really maximized your time on earth? Time is scarce. If you don't understand that life is precious and every minute, every second counts, then you really need to go around the world and see how many people really are in bad shape. Have some compassion for these people and have some gratitude for where you are. Because most people, if you're running your own business, you're in pretty damn good shape. You're in that percent that a lot of people wish they were there. So stop whining about it. Stop complaining.
Amen, Jay. Amen. I love it. As you start this next stage of your journey, like, what's your hopes for the book and for how are you going to continue to lead these core values in the next stage?
Well, I'm still living my core values. Writing a book is definitely improving continuously, evolving. I knew nothing. I knew as much about starting a business as I did writing a book, and just kind of over 4 years wrote it, edited it, published it. It's coming out in about 3 weeks on November 30th. This is 2021, and that's fun. That's I'm doing that. It's just another vehicle for evolving. And I told you it was because I wanted to help initially the employees. So that's one thing. I'm on 5 boards, from almost seed round up to I'm on a public board, Masonite, New York Stock Exchange. That's evolving. I've never done that. I've never been on a public board before, so I'm learning. I'm on the audit committee. That's where my CPA is actually coming in handy. That's super fun because I'm with a lot of sharp people, really smart. It's manufacturing. I've never done manufacturing, so I've got to learn that really fast. That's fun too. And then all these others that are sort of at various stages, whether they're getting their B round or their D round, and working with the other investors and the venture capital people and listening how they're thinking. And I'm thinking, hey, can we put a little more humanity into this a little bit? Can we think about our people? Can we think about customer experience? That kind of stuff. Branding, what is our message? How do we feel about our people? What are we doing to help our people? Can we think about that a little bit? So that's what I'm doing. And then I've got 5 children, but they're all adults. They're all in their 30s. And I have 7 grandkids, my 7 startups. So, and the oldest startup is 7. And she'll be 8 in a few weeks, next month. So
your hands
it's a
full
great life. Well, I've got nothing. I'm building a house. Why don't I building a house? I don't need a new house. I've got a great house. I've always wanted to build a house. I wanted to see what that was like. I wanted to evolve and try it and experiment. And, sometimes it's really, really fun. Sometimes it's frustrating, but that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to help my kids, my grandkids, all these companies. I'm teaching in the business school at Rice University, helping them figure out whether they want to take that job at Amazon or start their own business. Those are tough choices, actually.
Start your own business and sell back
Or
to
or
Amazon.
or, or become a
Uh,
consultant at Bain or something like that, where they're paying you a bunch of money for these jobs, and now you're going to go into something that has a very low likelihood of success, and you may not even be able to eat for a while. I mean, how bad do you really want this? And it's a tough decision because they've got good ideas and they're passionate about it, but it's a hard decision, especially if they're married and they've got responsibilities to somebody else. So I'm just trying to help people with their lives,
I love
and
it.
in turn, it's very satisfactory for me. Super blessed,
I,
super
and
grateful.
and I can just tell that I can tell that it's real for you. And I'm curious, what keeps your perspective on all this? Like, what other like practices that you have that like, you wake up every day and everybody wants this, but life can be hard sometimes. And the hard things that, like you said, the failures help you learn. But like, what keeps your perspective on the right side?
Um, okay, so this has all been all positive stuff, right? Pretty aspirational.
I would say so.
Death. Death is what keeps my perspective. I am. I said that quote before about the idea of death saves man. That is true
Hmm.
for me. I think about it all the time. Not that I'm worrying about it, but how lucky I am to be alive and how lucky I am to have something. And I want to know just what am I capable of? What can I do? What are my children capable of? What are my grandchildren capable of? What influence can I have over them, over the students, over these companies that I'm on board? Every day, I'm trying to do something that will make a difference and help me and everybody around me get better than they ever believed possible. These really are my core values. This is what I do. And death is my prime motivator. Um, when you boil it
It,
down
it, it,
and I think about why were we successful, like, well, we had great marketing. Well, why did we have great marketing? And you can take this down and ask yourself the 5 questions. Ultimately, when you get down to the real answer, the the first principle, it's death. I am worried that I'm not going to be able to achieve everything I can or help everybody around me before I die. And I'm perfectly healthy. It's not like I'm, to my knowledge, terminally ill.
to my knowledge.
I just
Well,
have that perspective. My mother died when she was 46, when I was in college, from cancer, and my wife died from cancer at 47. Those things, unfortunately, have provided a type of perspective limits on how bad things can be. It's almost like there's a floor. That's the floor, death. Everything
mhm.
above over that is gravy. It's blessings. It's things to be grateful for. And I know it sounds really, again, soft and squishy, but that really is what keeps me going.
Well, and it's like you said, it's so interesting, Jay. Like there's the stoicism. I came across that when I was listening to Tim Ferriss podcast years ago, and I read this Benjamin Franklin biography. And honestly, when Benjamin Franklin got towards like the last third of his life, he said that death was every third thought, and it's just this great recalibration thought. It just kind of like brings it back to square one, and and it's just. It is it's this what's the whole thing that you can't have gratefulness or appreciation living in the same space as fear. So like, I mean, it really like eliminates it.
Right.
So it's a way to eradicate the other side.
Well, we could take this to a whole other level when we talk about meditation and which I do meditate. And there's a
You
lot
do
of,
transcendental meditation, or what kind of
well,
meditation?
I just do breathing, and it's part of my morning ritual where
Hmm.
I'm not going to go through read my book and you'll get the whole ritual. But
Well, that's it.
but that
Uh,
is really ultimately, when you think about meditation, it's about not fearing death. They don't like to say
hmm.
that, but a
Hmm.
lot of it is. It's looking at death
Jay, this
head
is
on and saying, I am fine.
This has been so enjoyable, Jay, and you you have a lot for people to look up to, and I think this has been just a lot of fun. I got two last questions, and I'll let you run.
Okay.
The first one is the word intentional. What does it mean to you? I feel like I've been getting an hour of what you would think of it. So in a shorter version, what does the word intentional mean for
Well,
you?
knowing what you want. I think you had mentioned that before. Knowing what you want and being very specific in your behavior, not just thinking and knowing, but executing. Plenty of people talk. I think using Benjamin Franklin, and it was an autobiography of Benjamin Franklin, not a biography, I think, and it's an awesome book. I love that book. It's short. In fact, he didn't even finish it, right? So one of his
The one that I read was definitely not short. It was
oh,
it was like 40 hours on Audible. So
all right,
yeah,
then it's a different book.
it was
But the
meaty.
autobiography of Benjamin Franklin is a really good book. Um, one of the things that he said is, "Well done is better than well said." So don't just talk about it. Don't just think about it. Do it.
Oh, that's awesome. The next question is, where can people buy your book and find more about you?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. All the usual
Got to do it.
places, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Books a Million. Right now, you pre-order, but in a couple weeks, it's going to be wide open and buy as many as you can. No, I'm really hoping that this is a way for me to leverage all the things that we've been talking about to people who I'll never be able to meet. Because now I do it through
Mhm.
events, I do it through podcasts, and this helps a lot too to get the message out, helping people become better than they ever believed possible. But when they read the book and then they pass it on to somebody else, they get other people to buy it. They buy it for their team members, for their leadership team. It's about disrupting themselves as opposed to being disrupted by everyone else. That brings me joy, and that's what I'm hoping is going to happen with everything. Lead from the core, the four principles for profit and prosperity.
Jay, I want everybody to go out and get their copy too, because I if it's way more of this, then it's going to be very good for for everybody that is being touched by the bug. Thank you so much for coming on the
Thank
show,
you,
Jay.
Ryan. Thank you so much for having me.